Kunya Vihari Gopinana Pallava Girivaradati Gopinana Pallava Girivaradati Gopinana Pallava Girivaradati Gopinana Yasodananda Praja Janarandana Yasodananda Praja Janarandana Yamuna Tera Panachalate Yamuna Tera Vanachalate Jai Uranamaruva Punya Vihari Jai Uranamaruva Punya Vihari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Hansa Paramedikacharya Oath of Tera Satishi Shiman, His Divine Grace Abhaya Chananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Jai Iskad Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Jai Ananda Koti Voice Navrind Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Jai Friends say Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sidway Nigadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jai Sri Sri Radhakrishna Gopinath Shine Kunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Vacharanam Ki Jai Jagadasami Ki Jai Yamurmai Ki Jai Shimani Lasi Devi Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees, all glory is the assembled devotees. All glory is to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Vahom Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutle Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th Canto, Chapter 23, Text 11. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vasudevaya. Rahatrato Rahat Karma Rahat Vanush Sutaha Adyad Ramanas Tasmash Joyadrota Udaritaha Brahadrato Brahat Karmaha Ajad Brahan Manhastas Mash Jaya Jayadrata Udaritaha Rahadrato Rahatkarma Rahatvanuscha Vatsutaha Adyan Brahmanashtasmas Brahmanashtasmas Jayadrata Udaritaha Rahadrato Rahatkarma Advanuschatsutaha Adyad Brahmanastasmas Jayadrata Udaritaha. Okay. Ladies? Okay. Brahadrata Brahadharata Brahatkarma Brahatkarma Brahatvanuho Brahatvanu Cha also Tatsutaha the sons of Prithu Laksha Adyat from the eldest Brahadurata Brahmanaha Brahmana was born. Tasmat from him Brahmana. Jayadratha a son named Jayadratha. Udaritaha that's celebrated as his son. So translation, the sons of Pritulaksha, from the eldest Brahadratha came the son named Brahmana, and from Brahmana came a son named Jayadratha. Let me speak a little bit about this. So, Om Gana Tividandasha Vidanjana Shlabaya. See, all these names are really names. Like, Brahadratha means great chariot. Great chariot driver. Bratkarma, great actor, you know. And then finally we have our friend, Jayadratha, which is victory chariot, isn't it? Everybody has such interesting names in these stories, isn't it? So just, yeah, like even the sages, like Durvas, it means the sage with a bad temper, Durvas. Dhritarashtra, someone who was very determined with the astras, the weapons. So anyway, so Jayadrath, who you all know, very famous personality, he has a lot to play in a lot of stories about him in the Mahabharata. So Jayadrath was actually asked by the Kurus to kidnap Draupadi. And it's a very interesting story because the Kurus were very, very upset that Draupadi had married the 5 Pandavas. Actually, first Arjuna, because Arjuna won her in the Swayamvara. Swayamvara actually is interesting because the word means that the girl chooses her husband. It's not that she's simply the trophy. Sometimes you think like that and you hear these stories. Because in America that we have this saying, trophy wife. You ever heard of that? That means someone marries someone who's very beautiful and you show her off for everybody. It's like you have trophies on your shelf. Isn't it? Just like you won many soccer games, you have some trophies, isn't it? Isn't it true? But your wife is not trophy wife. She's a nice wife. Anyway, so sometimes people win. So anyway, so the Kshatriyas, they have this Swayamvara, where they have some competition. And basically the girl has a right to say no. But usually, because she's a Kshatriya girl, she's attracted. Because the interesting thing is that ladies also have their different varnas. Sometimes the men like to think that the women should just like fit in with the husband's varna, and they're just like a blank slate. So they're thinking, she should just respond, I'm the Pati Dev. She's the Priya. So there's this feeling that, chauvinistic feeling, it's called chauvinism, that the wife should just like follow the husband blindly and fit into his nature. But or the women don't have their own psychophysical nature. But that's actually an illusion. Some very fanatic devotees present it like that. But it's an illusion. Everybody has their nature. Therefore, when marriages are arranged or marriages are done, the consideration is what are the varnas of the two different personalities. For example, there's this concept of anulom and pratilom, right? So anulom means that sometimes a man can marry a lady from a lower caste, another caste. Let's use the word varna, because this caste is really not really the point. So just you have many instances of this. Like Kashyapa Diti. She was from Kshatriya and he was a Brahmin. So, and many stories about this. Many stories. So anyway, so the point is that the women do have their varnas, and they, practically speaking, a lady is not supposed to marry someone of a higher caste, of a lower caste, sorry. Because that would create friction in the family, isn't it? Like if the lady is much more intelligent than the man, and the man is just like a bungie. You know what a bungie is? No. Construction worker. Let's say the lady, I've seen this sometimes, the lady is actually very intelligent. She's a Brahmin. And the man is actually a construction worker. It doesn't work because of the male psychology, isn't it? He's thinking, this lady is very intelligent, and I'm supposed to be the boss here. And she can run rings around him with her brain. The poor guy is just like completely bewildered. So anyway, so these considerations have to be taken into account. Plus, the lady has a choice. She can say no. Even though the man has won the competition, she can say no. I mean, just like in the case of Karna in the Swayamvara Draupadi. Karna was actually, practically speaking, equal to Arjuna in the ability to shoot arrows. And he could have actually shot the eye of the fish that was up in the ceiling or up in the sky, and looking at the reflection in a lake or a body, some sort of body of water. He could have done that easily, just by no, not going to marry him. And of course, he took that as an insult, because the reason she gave for not marrying him, that he was a charioteer's son, Radeya. And so she had the right to refuse him. So the reason I'm telling this story, there's a reason I'm telling this whole story. So therefore, Karna was actually extremely offended, extremely upset, and Karna's friends and the other friends were extremely upset too. But Karna was offended because Karna was anyway. So therefore, they hatched a plot to arrange for Jayadratha to kidnap forcibly Draupadi. And so what happened is that Jayadratha was actually able to put her on the chariot, and she was going away with the chariot. And the Pandavas, especially Arjuna, was able to stop Jayadratha. And the Pandavas did something very, very interesting. Instead of killing Jayadratha, because that was actually the punishment that was recommended for someone who kidnaps your wife, isn't it? Someone kidnaps your wife. I mean, don't do that in Fiji. And also, actually, there's injunctions. Someone kidnaps, someone sets fire, someone gives poison, they can be killed. But the point is, you don't go and kill them. You can defend yourself, and in the process of defending yourself, there may be some killing there. But it's not that 3 days later you go and you kill the person. The whole point of that injunction, that you have a right to kill the person, is in the process of defense, not the process of vengeance, because the punishment is actually given by the government, not by you. But let's say someone comes into your house and starts to kidnap your wife, then you have a right to fight them with whatever means you have. I mean, if you have a gun, if you have sticks, you have a knife, and if they get killed, you're innocent. Unless, of course, your wife goes voluntarily with the guy. Like Ravan. Ravan would kidnap people's wives, but they liked it because he was so handsome. You can imagine, any of you ladies, if Ravana came with all of his handsomeness and money, you'd drop your husbands like a hot potato. Isn't it? What is this guy? I can marry someone who has all the wealth in the universe, and Pushpaka Vimana, I can fly around like this. So getting back to the story. So Jayadratha attempted to kidnap Draupadi, and he was captured by the Pandavas, and the Pandavas were going to kill him, because that's the appropriate punishment. And they were the appropriate people to give the appropriate punishment, because Yudhisthira was basically the emperor, even though they were in exile. So, being very soft-hearted, and this is one of the things that is mentioned many times in the Bhagavatam, that the ladies are very soft-hearted. Just like Prabhupada said, ladies than men, right? Just like I just did a marriage, or went to a marriage, I didn't do a marriage. I was just at a marriage, and the ladies were all up front, and the men were all in the back, right? You ever notice that? And the ladies were all crying and attentive, and the men were actually bored stiff. So the point is that it was actually quite sad, because she didn't want Jayadratha to be killed, even though he was the one who kidnapped her. She was thinking of Dushala. Now, Dushala was the daughter of Dhritarashtra and Gandhari. It's very interesting how Dushala came about. Dushala actually, there's that whole story that Gandhari, she gave birth to a lump of flesh, and the lump of flesh was divided by Srila Vyasadeva into 101 parts, not just 100 parts. She wanted 100 sons. That was actually predicted by Lord Shiva, that she would have 100 sons. You know that, and that's why Dhritarashtra was so enthusiastic to marry her. Yeah, 100 sons, that's pretty good. So anyway, everyone was bewildered. Why there are 101 parts, 101 little embryos that have to be put in incubators. They had this fancy type of incubator there. And so it was described that she wanted a daughter too. So 101 sons and one daughter. Dushala was the daughter, and Dushala married Jayadratha. So Draupadi, getting back to the story, Draupadi did not want Jayadratha killed because Dushala was her friend and relative. And she didn't want Dushala just to be without her husband. So she said, don't kill him, punish him some other way. So what happened is that Bhimsen, he said to Arjuna, give me one of your really sharp arrows. You know, the arrows of Arjuna were like razor blades. They could actually shave with them. Super sharp. So Bhimsen took the arrow head of Arjuna's arrow and made 5 little sikas on Jayadratha's head. He said, this way you will remember us always. This is country in nature. It's really interesting. Yes. So what happened is that so much, and he started performing austerities to Lord Shiva. Finally, he got the benediction that whoever would cause his head to fall to the ground, would actually die immediately, get immolated, burst into flames, right? So he thought, nobody's going to want to kill me, and then he also got a benediction that he would be able to hold off the Pandavas for one day, not Arjuna, but the other Pandavas for one day. So he was really proud. So what happened is that one day Arjuna was drawn away to fight at the far end of the battlefield, and he wasn't with his 4 brothers. And the Kuru dynasty, that is Duryodhana and company, arranged this, what's called the Chakra Vyuha. Chakra Vyuha is a type of military formation, and it's very difficult to understand how to get out or how to get in. Very, very dangerous thing. And basically, none of the 4 Pandavas understood how to break in or break out of the Chakra Vyuha. And so therefore it was going to be the end of the battle of Kurukshetra. And the Pandavas were going to lose that day. So what were they going to do? It was a real problem. So therefore what happened is that Abhimanyu came forward. Abhimanyu, the son of Subhadra and Arjuna. He came forward and he said, I know how to get into the Chaturvyuha. I don't know how to get out. I know how to get in. So if you follow me in, you can protect me and we'll defeat the Kurus inside the Chaturvyuha. Chakravyuha, not Chaturvyuha. Chakravyuha. And so Pandavas said, yeah, that's a good idea. And they said, how did you learn how to do this? How did you learn how to enter into the Chakravyuha? And Abhimanyu recited or told them that actually one time Arjuna was actually describing how to enter into the Chakravyuha. And Abhimanyu was in the womb of his mother at the same time. Abhimanyu was the son of Arjuna and Subhadra, of course. And so he was in the womb of his mother, and his mother was sleeping, but he was listening inside the womb. That's actually also an interesting point, that when a child is in the womb of the mother, the child can actually hear, even though the child can't speak, the child can't do anything, may not be particularly conscious. But it's the hearing process that is the first thing acquired by a child, the first sense acquired by the child. And it is also the last sense acquired, or last sense kept by who's passing away. It's a very interesting point. Because if someone is leaving their body, they may be completely in a coma. And sometimes people who have been in comas come out of comas. And they remember what people said around them while they were in a coma. Like for example, one time I was in an induced coma because I was having an operation. It was a good operation. It was a hernia operation. So I remember everything they said during the operation. Unfortunately, the doctors were just talking about their pets. I was thinking, here they are operating on a great personality, probably. And they're talking about cats and dogs. Isn't it? And then I had another operation, an eye operation, and the doctors and nurses were getting romantic during my operation. So you remember? This is stupid. Why am I subjecting myself to these doctors? It's like that, isn't it? So anyway, so Abhimanyu is getting back to the point. So also, if someone's getting ready to leave their body, if they're in a coma, then we should be chanting around them. Even if they're not conscious, they can hear. The soul is hearing. Because the sound vibration is the most important penetrating thing that goes to the heart. It's not simply on the mental platform, it goes right to the heart. Bhavanti Vritkarna Rasayana Kata to Joshanadashu Apavarga Vartmani Shuddha Ratira Bhakti Anukrameshati. There's Lord Kapila says. So anyway, Abhimanyu, he learned this while he was in the womb. He actually learned such a Kshatriya, he learned Kshatriya skills in the womb of his mother. But he never learned how to get out. That was the problem. But still, they were thinking everything will be all right because I can get in, follow me in, it'll be all right. So they proceed to the Chakravyuha, and then Abhimanyu enters in. But Jayadratha is able to hold off the four Pandavas. And Abhimanyu enters in, pierces through right to the middle of the Chakravyuha, and then in the middle of the Chakravyuha are all these Maharatas. Maharata means someone who can, let's say, defeat hundreds or thousands, or I don't remember the exact number, thousands and thousands of other soldiers and horses. And even more than a Maharata is an Atirata. Arjuna was an Atirata, not just a Maharata. So these Maharatas, they gang up on Abhimanyu, which is against the rule or the rules of martial dealings, isn't it? Because they had agreed at the beginning of the Battle of Kurukshetra that it would be one person fighting against one. Chariot driver would fight against a chariot driver. Not driver, but charioteer. And a foot soldier would fight against another foot soldier. A guy with a club would fight against another guy with a club. You know, these are rules. This is very chivalrous. You know, we have to understand these people, like with the names that they had. Great fighter, great chariot driver, Maharata, like that. I mean, these people were proud martial arts people. So anyway, against the rules of engagement in the battle, these Maharatas surrounded Abhimanyu and just mercilessly killed him as he was fighting off heroically. Actually, he didn't just like, I surrender. He was fighting them and practically defeating them, but somehow or other, all around they surrounded him, like Dronacharya and others. And they killed him. And so, okay, so fast forward. So the Pandavas have been held off, the four Pandavas, Yudhisthira and Bhimsen, Nakula and Sahadev, had been held off by Jayadratha, because he had that benediction from Lord Shiva. So, meantime, Arjuna comes back and he's informed that his son has been killed. And that the person who held off his brothers was Jayadratha. So he gets really, really angry. And he says, I'm Jayadratha. I'm going to... And so Krishna says to Arjuna later on, this is from the Mahabharata, he says, why are you making promises without talking to me first? You know, it's not all the time I have to fill in for you. You know, next time. So anyway, so the Kurus, they hear about Arjuna's promise. And first Jayadratha's thinking, you know, I got to take a vacation, go somewhere else. But that wouldn't work because it was on the battlefield that Arjuna had to confront Jayadratha. So if Jayadratha runs away, it's a different thing. Then Arjuna would probably follow him anyway. So the Kurus say to Jayadratha, don't worry, you'll be at the back of the battlefield. We'll all be there protecting you. It's not a problem. There's no way Arjuna's going to get through. There's no way. And so Jayadratha feels, yeah, you're right. I'm going to be all right. And he's very happy, you know, thinking Arjuna's going to kill himself. The Kurus are very happy. Arjuna's going to kill himself today, you know, this next day of the battle. So anyway, so the battle starts, and Jayadratha's all the way in the back, and Arjuna's all the way in the front. And so he's fighting off everybody, all these Maharatas, just to get to Jayadratha. You know, killing and fighting and basically he's not able to get to Jayadratha. He gets to right before where Jayadratha is, but Jayadratha is being protected by all these strong Maharatas, Atirathas, and he doesn't know what to do because the battle ends at sunset, you know, with chivalry. Even though the Kurus did not observe the rules of chivalry because they killed Abhimanyu by ganging up on him. So Arjuna doesn't, you know, what am I going to do? And, you know, it's almost sunset time, you know, we're going to be in problems. I'm going to have to kill myself. Practically he gets ready to think about how he's going to make a funeral pyre. So then, Krishna fills in for Arjuna. Krishna or covers the sun. He covers the sun. Actually, some stories say he covers it with the chakras, some stories anyway. But in any case, he makes it seem like the sun has gone down, sunset, past sunset. And the Kurus are jumping up and down in ecstasy. Haribol! Not Haribol. I don't know what they said, Jai. Arjuna's going to die, and Jayadratha goes out in front of Arjuna. It's true. It's true. Practically sticking his tongue out, just making faces at Arjuna's thinking, oh, I'm finished. Get ready and make the funeral pyre. Because these Kshatriyas kept their word. And this is a very important point too. Kshatriyas, Brahmins, they keep their word. Vaishyas sometimes would lie a little bit about, for you there's no prophet, like Prabhupada said. But the Brahmins and Kshatriyas, there's, like it's described about Lord Rama, he had one wife, one arrow, and one word, right? One wife, one arrow, and one word. Because the arrow would always hit its mark. Whenever Lord Ram, pulled back his bow and put the arrow there, he had to shoot it. It's not that he would put it down. It had to go somewhere. And there's stories about that in the Ramayana. So what happened is Arjuna's thought, I'm going to commit suicide, and then everybody was running around. They put down all their weapons. The Kurus, they thought, this is cool, we've won. And so Krishna just goes, boom, turn the sun on. And here comes the sun, and anyway. And so the sun goes on, and you go, uh-oh. And Arjuna, and Krishna says to Arjuna, okay, kill him, but use your arrow that causes his head to fly some distance onto the lap of Jayadratha's father, who's mentioned here. That's why I'm talking about this today. Brihana Mana. Actually, I didn't know the name of his father before, but now we know. Reading Bhagavatam, isn't it? Fix this arrow, this like a half crescent or something like that. And Jayadratha is like, oh! And Arjuna pulls it back, the arrow on the bow, boom! And the head gets cut off. It's really nice. So the head gets cut off, and the head flies through the air. And Jayadratha's father, Brahmana, is actually meditating. Om Namo Shivaya, Shivaya, Shivaya Namaha. And the head flies onto his lap. So he feels this thing land on his lap. And he looks. Yuck! If you're sitting like this, if I'm sitting in class and all of a sudden there's a head on my lap, I'm not going to just keep sitting here. Hey, there's a head on my lap. Right? I'd go, ugh! I'd stand up, ugh! And he didn't realize it was his son's head. And so immediately, boom! He dies. And that's the end of the story of Jayadratha. So, I guess that's all we have time for today. So it's an interesting story. So many nice stories in the Mahabharata. So many nice stories. So anyway, comments, Jayadratha? Sumukha, you usually have questions. What's the question? What's the question? No? Don't don't go kidnapping anyone else's wife. Or else you get 5 sikas. It's really amazing how proud these Kshatriyas are like that. Even Rukmi, when he was trying to attack Krishna, when Krishna was kidnapping Rukmini, Rukmi was so proud that he vowed not to go back to his kingdom after that. He established another kingdom. It's really interesting. And they're always vengeful. Always, the Kshatriyas, thinking getting even like that. It's described like Bhimsen. He was always breathing heavily like a snake that was trampled. And even Draupadi, she told the Pandavas until Bhimsen brings the blood from Duryodhana on my hair, I'm not going to tie my hair up anymore. I mean, such a Kshatriya spirit. Can you imagine that? To keep my hair out, whatever. And that was like in the Pandavas' faces every day, that their wife wasn't combing her hair, it was just out like that. And then Bhimsen actually goes and rips open the chest of Dushashan. Can you imagine that? And, well, actually the description is that he drank the blood, but he didn't drink the blood. He made believe he was drinking it. Obviously he didn't drink blood. And then he takes the blood and he puts it on his wife's hair. And she likes it. I mean, talk about, people say women don't have natures. That's a Kshatriya nature. Saini, right? She was born from fire. Amazing, isn't it? How many of you women would put the blood from your husband's enemy or your enemy on your hair? And would any of you do that? Yuck! But the Kshatriya nature, isn't it? So certain women have Kshatriya natures, certain women have, and like men. And so when there's a marriage that should be arranged, generally it's better like, actually it's Devahuti and Kardama. So better it's the same nature. And then we have the story of Devahuti and Kardama. That was what I wanted to refer to before. Devahuti and Kardama. Devahuti was actually a Kshatriya lady, and Kardama was a Brahmin. And she had to undergo so many austerities just to be with her husband, right? And she was used to soft beds and everything like that, and it was really difficult for her, but she did it. And later on, her husband awarded her with an aerial mansion. Because she thought, my wife is going through all these difficulties, so let me give her a nice place ultimately. So he had this aerial mansion. I mean, it's a mansion that flew through the sky, and she had so many servants decorating her hair and everything like that, because she was a Kshatriya lady. Whereas a Brahmin lady is like a Brahmin man. Austere, samadama, shoto, shanti rajura mevaja. So anyway, any other questions? Any questions? Rasbihari, any questions?
Why when Jayendra did the students and Lord Shiva benedicted him
What?
Lord Shiva benedicted him,
Yeah.
he can win over Pandavas in
One day, yeah.
But when Arjuna is not there.
Right.
So why Arjuna?
Why is Arjuna? Because Arjuna actually had Lord Shiva's weapon, Pasupatra. And he was actually, Arjuna was Lord Shiva's disciple too, in a real sense. So, I'm just guessing at it right now, but that's my understanding, that there's a very close relationship between Arjuna and Lord Shiva, from Lord Shiva, and they were very close. I mean, there's many other stories in the Mahabharata, but yeah, so that's my understanding of that particular pastime. That Lord Shiva would not give him the benediction of feeding all the Pandavas. Because Arjuna had Lord Shiva's weapon. Any other questions? Nice stories. And as we were talking about last night, the whole battle of Kurukshetra had a purpose. And that purpose was to get rid of all the demons that were taking shelter on the earth planet. We mentioned that last night. It's not just like wholesale killing for no purpose whatsoever. It was an interplanetary battle. In other words, the demons had taken shelter on the earth planet. And the earth was overburdened because these demons were born on the earth planet. So it was necessary for Krishna to get rid of all the demons at one time. Because if Krishna had to kill each demon individually, it would have taken forever. You know, how long did it take for him to kill Jarasandha? Not Krishna didn't kill him, but Bhimsen. Some days they had to fight, right? Isn't it? Was it 21 days or something like that? They had to fight. And finally, Jarasandha had to be bifurcated. And I had to tolerate insults before wipe him out. So if you had to do that with each individual demon, we'd still be doing it. Right? So therefore, in Kali Yuga, getting to the point, in Kali Yuga, because everyone has a demoniac mentality, we have to do Sankirtan. We can't just go to each person, we have to do congregational chanting, right? And the congregational chanting can wipe out the demoniac mentality in billions of demons simultaneously, billions of persons, sorry, not demons. Devotee, and they have some tendencies that are not so nice. So it's our business to get rid of the bad tendencies and to see them as potential devotees, or as devotees. Everybody by nature is a devotee. Okay, so what do we do now? Guru Puja, greeting the deities. Okay. All glory is to His divine grace, Srila Prabhupada ki